Welcome to Remembering You, a space for slowing down, seeing again, and gathering the parts of yourself that the world asked you to forget.
Each week, we wander through stories, ancient, personal, and collective, to explore how perspective changes everything. How what we look at and how we look can open doors to who we truly are.
Take a breath, feel your feet.
You've arrived.
Let's begin remembering you.
So you ready to tell the world your story?
Let's jump in the deep end.
You have such a good story.
Both feet.
I'm so excited. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us where you were born.
I was born in Columbus, Ohio, at a small little campus hospital on the campus of Ohio State University when my parents had been married for just barely 2 years and had moved to Columbus for mom to finish her degree. And much to my grandparents' chagrin, she got pregnant right before classes started, and she dropped out and never went back and started having babies hand over fist.
So how many babies did she have?
I am the oldest of 6.
Yeah.
I have 4 brothers and 1 sister.
So tell me what Columbus was like. Like, what was it like being the oldest?
Well, it's kind of like the goldfish in a little pond or fish bowl. The water that it's swimming in is just its reality. So it was just normal. What was it like growing up in Columbus?
Like what the family dynamics were like?
My dad started off working construction, and I don't have any memories as a kid of him roofing, but he, through my childhood, would talk about it and just had a lot of joy. It was a part of a construction company that was made up of a number of young men, college age and older, who were a part of a campus church that my parents were a part of. And I remember some of my earliest memories, we lived right across from Tuttle Park, which is a park, and there's a pool and a rec center. And I grew up just living really close to this park and on swim team and soccer. And we were part of a double Dutch competition one year. My brother and I, living in a kind of a campus atmosphere. When I was born, they were living in a duplex, and they talk about brothers and sisters, folks who were in the church living in that neighborhood. And so there were folks that were sharing meals with each other regularly and a lot of Bible study and music. And so kind of a Jesus-hippie, kind of evangelical flavor from my childhood. My mom and dad decided to homeschool us. And so that was kind of a major shift. So for my mom, I think all of her siblings graduated from college and educators, and then she doesn't graduate from college and starts having babies and decides to unschool her kids, not literally, but homeschooling. And I think that was probably an example, influenced my life as far as the kind of go against the flow, little rebel, a little bit of, mom and dad were paving their own way. I have memories of my dad being in the backyard, throwing a baseball and hitting it with a big orange plastic baseball bat as a kid. And He made a rope swing in our backyard, and I remember him pushing me in that and swinging. And we had this huge tractor tire. I don't know where he found it, and then got lots of bags of sand, play sand, and so we had this big sandbox and a lot of play. We moved from that duplex and bought a 100-year-old home. And that was a project for I was 5 years old, about the next 10 years. My mom's best friend, their family lived next door to us. So we had friends right there next door. A lot of friends in the neighborhood. Not necessarily everybody was conservative, Christian, evangelical, fundamentalist. Some friends up the street were Jewish, Ben and Jacob. And had some other friends that parents had been divorced, Adam and Jay, and another friend, his parents were kind of on the opposite political spectrum than what my parents were. And Darren, he lived down the way, and we'd get together and ride bikes, and we were all on swim team together. So we'd walk to the city pool, played roller hockey and soccer and basketball in our alley and backyards. And yeah, there was a lot of interaction. Most of the time kids were coming over to our house. And when it was snowing, we were building igloos and sledding, and it was always at our house. That was kind of the gathering place. Mom had a watchful eye, and folks in the neighborhood knew that our home was safe.
Yeah. How would you describe your mom and dad? Like, give us a sense of who they are.
Mm-hmm. So my dad is the middle child of 5 boys, and my grandpa Schmidt was a World War II vet and was a part of the second wave at Normandy. Grandma, it was a second marriage. Her first marriage, her husband was killed in an auto accident, and she had my Uncle Rick, who just passed away when she met my grandfather. And so my dad talks about football and family gatherings at the American Legion, scouting. I think all my uncles are Eagle Scouts, and so scouting was a big part of his family, and then our family. Sense of duty. My dad tells a story of growing up in the Lutheran church, and the small little church in southern Ohio was kind of very religious, I think, and that's how probably he would describe it. And then in high school, he had an experience. I think he had several experiences. One, he was on the football team and found a lot of life and I think identity, kind of a highlight in his life is playing football in high school. And then secondly, he had an experience when he and his siblings were, and I think maybe his mom, I'm not sure if grandpa was there as well, but they were watching one evening a Billy Graham crusade. Mm. And at the end, when they have the altar call and are playing Just As I'll stop. Just As I Am, he prayed the sinner's prayer as Billy Graham gave the invitation, and talks about that, I think, spiritual part of his life and his experience turning on and being fascinated with scripture and wanting to learn and grow and follow God.
So, how old was he when that happened?
I think he was in his mid-teens.
Oh, okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of carried through the rest of his life?
Defining chapter. Dad is in his early 70s, and he went to Bible college, loved studying Greek and Hebrew. I think that was probably one of the reasons that I took the path that I did educationally, because I would see him every morning reading his Bible and in prayer. Remember 3x5 cards?
Yeah. Little index cards.
Yeah. Little index cards. I grew up with my dad. He always had index cards in his pocket, and they were scriptures that he would write out and keep in his pocket. That was part of his mode of memorizing scripture, and would meditate on those verses throughout the day. Real strong part of his life. He was an elder and a Sunday school superintendent and served in different ways. Don't know if he ever felt, well, I know he would say that he never really felt like he had found a church that he belonged in. And so I think there's always been kind of this searching that I've witnessed in my dad, of trying to find a place of belonging, maybe is a good way to put it. But he's had his ups and downs with faith, and I think he would say his relationship with God and his number one firstborn son has been a part of his ups and also his downs with his faith journey. And as I have experienced a number of different things in my life, we're definitely connected. So that's my dad. He retired. He worked for probably 40 years doing commercial and residential fire, burglary, if I can say that right, and repair service. Yeah. My parents live in southern Ohio, small little town, just right near where they both grew up.
Yeah, it's a cute little place.
It is a great little place. Fun to visit.
So tell us about Mom. What's Mom like?
Mom is one of four children. So my grandpa and grandma, my mom's parents, super hard workers. Grandpa still living, had many rental properties, and my mom talks about when he wasn't working the night shift as a plumber at a local car manufacturing plant, he was doing repairs on the houses that they were renting, and he was taking care of the big and the minor repairs. So Grandpa is very thrifty, very creative, able to make something out of nothing. I remember when my grandparents retired and then moved to Florida, being a part of that process, and all of the stuff that found a new home at our house, because Grandpa had always saved everything because he didn't know when that little piece of wire or that 3 inches off of that 2x4 that he cut off might come in handy. And so we inherited many of Grandpa's treasures. So I grew up with a mom who was very, very thrifty. I grew up going to thrift stores, and Mom stuck to a budget. We definitely were lower middle class as a family of 8. And I don't remember how old I was when I stopped thrift storing. Like that was always a part of my experience. Probably when I finally got a job and started making money myself, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a little bit more picky, and came into some of my own style and preferences, and it was sometimes fit within a thrift store context and sometimes not so much. Mom was very much a reader. She was always reading to us kids, very patient. She baked bread a couple times a week, grinding her own flour, and we grew up having dinner every night together as a family, and good home cooked meal. My parents went through some different phases of eliminating animal proteins and dairy, and so we had a lot of different experiences as kids growing up with, let's say, unique cuisines.
Yes,
definitely outside of our preference and taste. But Mom yeah, she wasn't afraid to try new things. She also was I would say mom was a community organizer. She started a community watch program in our neighborhood. We had permit parking on our neighborhood because she got tired of Ohio State football games taking place. Like where we lived, we could hear the Horseshoe Stadium, the games, which was amazing because it was close enough to walk to a game, which we had done that. But all the people coming in for games, we wouldn't have parking on Saturdays in our front yard. And so she organized the neighbors and we had permit parking, and she raised money, bake sales for our swim team and soccer. And she always was at swim practice with us and very, very present.
Did you like being homeschooled?
That's a great question. So I am dyslexic and also a little ADD. And so my parents, when I would do standardized testing, like recommendation was pretty frequently, you need to get Ryan on meds and he needs to get into special education. And so I think the one-on-one that I got with my mom, I know that there were times that it must have been maddening for her because I would just get to a point where I would just start guessing at words when I was a kid. And like, I was so frustrated because I couldn't tell whether it was a D or a B or a Q. And that was just so painful and stressful. Yeah. So she had a lot of patience for me. Homeschooling also was very spiritual because we were part of a homeschool organization that was worldwide. And obviously at the time, I didn't know, but looking back now, if you go online and you search for homeschool cults, the homeschool cult that I grew up in will be at the top of your Google search.
Yes.
So did I like homeschooling? You know, all of my friends admired us as a family, and they also talked about being bullied and the frustration of being on a bus for hours every day, as some of them were bused all the way across the city. And like there were so many perks. Growing up, every Tuesday morning during the school year, we would go to indoor pool at the city that the city had. And, you know, for a quarter, for 6 kids, we would all go swimming for a couple hours. And of course, because of being on swim team in the city system and taking swimming lessons, we knew all the lifeguards. And like they would always give us high fives and we'd talk about what's going on in our lives. And they were always interested. So there were so many different perks. I remember my first bus ride downtown to go see the Capitol building there in Columbus. And, you know, adventure as a kid was pretty amazing, and getting to meet senators, and because it was homeschool day. And so we were representing homeschoolers and having that experience. Yeah, no, I definitely don't regret. It was a good experience.
Is there like a formative moment from childhood that you can follow the thread that has, you know, still shows up in who you are today?
I love that question. Thank you. So I think probably two memories come to mind. One is when I was 5 years old, being in Sunday school, having my Sunday school teacher invite all of the students to bow their heads, close their eyes, and pray to ask Jesus into our hearts. I don't think I really understood or knew what I was doing, but the experience was so profound because as I said amen at the end of the prayer, lifted my head and opened my eyes, I looked out the window and the sky was bluer and the grass was greener than I'd ever seen before. And it was a heart-opening experience of just being in awe and wonder. And so that experience through the mountaintops and the valleys of life is one of those defining moments of who I am. And even when I was in my 20s and kind of stepped away from my evangelical faith and flirted with atheism for a little over a year, like I couldn't experience what I had experienced. Because once you taste, you can't untaste. And once you see, you can't unsee. And so in my experience, I think that was probably one of the fundamental moments in my life. Another one that comes to mind is when my grandfather passed away. And I was about 11 or 12 years old. And I had been to, I remember being at one Catholic funeral. We had a neighbor that passed away. And then I think I had maybe a great uncle that I really didn't know pass away. But it was totally different when it was my dad's dad. And he had been in and out of the hospital. And so we had seen him and he had been okay. And then went back in. When he passed away, I would say there was a searching, like I didn't know how to express, I didn't know how to name what the feelings of loss that I was experiencing. And so it was within the context of my family and my dad and also my grandmother that I felt safe in connection with them to cry and to feel my emotions, to know that it was going to be okay. The overwhelming sense of the dam is about to burst wide open was met with safety of my grandmother's arms holding me at the funeral. And my dad was right there as well. And so I think that when I talk about what I do today and the many experiences of grief, I like to think of them as breadcrumbs. And I go back to that initial experience with family loss and the passing of my grandfather.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So you've had a very kind of spiritual, religious upbringing. What about dating? Like, what happened when you turned into a teenager and your hormones came on? Like, what was that like?
So there is this thing called purity culture within the evangelical fundamentalist world, and a book called I Kiss Dating Goodbye. The author has since recanted and asked for the Christian community's forgiveness for the absolute, I think, unhealthy, he would use the word unhealthy, approach to human sexuality and acknowledging what is actually healthy and appropriate for folks to experience. So I would say that there was definitely interest in girls, but it wasn't something that I felt like I could express. So within homeschool culture that I grew up in, there was a very strong emphasis on betrothal and courtship, which basically is the idea of the parents, and typically a patriarchal system. So the fathers would come together and say, hey, I think my son and your daughter would make a great match, and let's set up some rules and some boundaries. And so there was always a chaperone present, and like there was no alone time. And there was this great celebration that maybe hand holding would take place before a couple got married.
Wow.
But definitely no kissing and anything, remotely coming close to the heavy petting or touch. So I had some girls that I had crushes on, and some of them were within the homeschool community and some of them were outside. And typically the ones who are outside absolutely were fascinated with the fact that I was very cautious and reserved, and oftentimes there was more invitation on their behalf, and I, for the most part, until I really didn't date anyone until I turned 18 years old and had kind of my own, had a car, had a job, and I didn't feel that I had to toe the party line like I did. And so those were some conversations that I just never had with my parents. I just kind of did my own thing. I was a little bit of I'm gonna do it. Yeah, it was definitely a kind of countercultural experience backwards. A lot of it was my, again, it was the ecosystem that I grew up in. So I didn't know any different. I don't feel like I necessarily missed out, although looking back, there were things that it's not healthy to have all of that suppressed emotion and energy, and to have shame about feeling certain feelings in your body. And there was very strong emphasis on no masturbation. Porn is going to send you to hell if you masturbate while, and then die before you confess, you're going to hell.
Oh my goodness.
Jesus, of course, is up in heaven watching you do your thing. And I mean, there was just a lot of, I don't think I realized the impact until my first marriage, and the fear that she expressed, and the anxiety, and just not being comfortable with her body or her sexuality. And so there were things that I learned and picked up, but I was a virgin until my wedding night when I was 25 years old. So dating was, I worked for the Boy Scouts for a number of summers while I was in college and seminary. And I don't know how this happened. Her name is Beth. She was dating the first aid officer at camp. And then they broke up at the end of the year. And somehow she gave me her phone number. And when I came back home from school the next summer, we had a new first aid officer, and she started hanging out. Strong Catholic. She had been married before. She was super young when she got married. And it was one of those things that both of us were kind of like looking at each other with a lot of lust and passion, and yet she didn't want to ruin me, and I was kind of like, I'm not sure that you understand the path that I'm on and where I'm going. And so we dated, but nothing physical other than we'd kiss and make out, but that was about it. So There was a lot of sexual repression.
So I want to maybe rewind just a little bit, because I think there's something important about who you are that we could explore a little bit before we kind of talk about marriage and first half of life. So it took me a little while to really understand the way that you experience the world and just how different it is, I think, from a lot of people. So can you tell us what I mean by that?
Yes, absolutely. I would fall into the category of a highly sensitive person.
Yeah.
And the way that has been experienced is through, first off, with my family, and being, I would say, hyper attuned energetically, emotionally, also spiritually, specifically to my mom. And so there is an experience that I had in my childhood that it took me into my 20s to be able to really find my own sense of self and not to lose myself in the energy of the people around me. And so I would say that it didn't matter where I was or what I was doing. If it was with my mom, I lost my sense of true north. Or I didn't even have a sense of true north, probably, is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
As a child. That I based all of my experience off of, is this moment safe or is this moment dangerous? Is this a time to have fun, or is this a time to be the serious older brother who eventually turned into the third parent within the family? And all of that was based off of tuning in very finely into my mom's energetic field. And so that's a part of my makeup, and has taken a good part of my life to be able to have a sense of self and healthy boundaries and not lose myself energetically in the energies around me. The other experience that I had as a child was beginning to see things and hear things that were not physically present. And within my faith, I never said or told anyone about it. So I would translate my experience of knowing things that I shouldn't have known, or there was no way for me to know it, but I did, or seeing things or hearing things that were outside of normal, everyday physical reality, as a spiritual gift, because that was also a part of our homeschooling and spiritual Christian culture, was that God gives people gifts. And so as time went on, there were moments that I would define what my experience was and how I was seeing or how I was feeling or what I was sensing through, just like the prophets of old heard God or saw God or experienced visions or had dreams. I'm having similar things. And it was private. It wasn't something that I wanted necessarily to share. And I think some of it was because of the pressure that I felt to parent my siblings, and meaning of my name is son of the king, or kingly or princely. And so there was a lot of emphasis from my parents that I was to be a spiritual leader in our home with my siblings, but then also in greater context. And I didn't always appreciate that or like that. It was just, it was what was real and what my experience was. I didn't have another experience. I didn't have anything else to compare it to, but I didn't always like it. And that pressure. And so when I started having certain experiences and insights and understanding come online, there was I'm just going to keep this for myself until I understand and experience. So deeply intuitive, very much an internal processor.
Yeah.
I crave silence and solitude. And in my, one of the things that I am grateful for from my upbringing is the focus to be in the Hebrew and the Greek scriptures and memorizing large portions of scripture and then meditating on it and just kind of ruminating and sitting in and with. And as I started to meditate, I experienced all of the noise that was around me of energy and voices and fields that I was tapping into. I was able to come to a place of clarity and peace, and I didn't feel like there were a bunch of monkeys bouncing around in my head as the monkey mind, and there was quiet and there was calm. I remember in my mid-teens, my grandmother gave me my first Walkman, and we weren't allowed to listen to secular music at all, like no rock music at all. It all had to be hymns or praise music. And so I was a good boy, and grandma also gave me a couple CDs or cassettes. One of them was Gregorian chant, and one of them was the best of Mozart and Beethoven and Chopin. And I would, for hours, listen to chant or classical music and just like drop into this space where there wasn't all of this noise and distraction in my head, and then also in my spiritual field as well. And I was able to kind of focus my attentional system into a place of silence and stillness. The other thing that I think was impactful in my experience as a kid was being in the Boy Scouts and going through the leadership opportunities that I had and getting my Eagle Scout and not being afraid to be out in the wilderness and how to be self-sufficient. So then in my early 20s, when I started doing a lot of solo backpacking, I had experiences in the wilderness that come from being alone in the wilderness for days upon end and not seeing another soul. And yeah, those were foundational. So it wasn't like I didn't have someone there to kind of guide me, like an elder or someone who could see or feel the overwhelm that my nervous system was experiencing. Like, yeah, overwhelm. One of the stories that I could tell is going, like, I don't remember as a kid ever going to my grandparents for Christmas without having a fever, waking up with a fever Christmas morning. It was crazy because my grandmother is on my mom's side of the family. She had her birthday on Christmas Eve. And so we'd always go to Grandma and Grandpa's Christmas Eve and then celebrate her birthday and go to the Christmas Eve service at their church and come home that night. And I always knew that the next morning I was going to wake up and be absolutely miserable with a fever and vomiting. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I had begun to realize how enmeshed I was emotionally with my mom and how stressful it was for her to have all of the kids spend a couple nights at grandma and grandpa's and all of the other family members who were going to be present. There was just so much pressure that we had to not mess anything up at grandma and grandpa's, and we had to be quiet, and we had to not be too much and not break anything. There were other dynamics as time went on and with family members, extended family members, that it wasn't until my 30s when I realized, I need to have some really clear boundaries in relationship to how I relate to my mom when I go home to visit them. And my mom didn't understand. My kid's mom, my wife at the time, didn't understand. And I was just like, I need to figure out how to maintain a sense of self and not lose myself in this and take on the stress and the pressure of person that was probably had the most beneficial impact in my life as a mom does in her kids' lives.
So you had a first wife.
Yes. It was an arranged marriage.
It was an arranged marriage, which is so bananas. So tell us about the two of you in your life together and how that was.
Yeah. Her name is Theodosia, and her name in Greek means God's gift. And I had graduated from seminary and it was an all guys seminary. And so I was just like, there aren't prospective life partners here at school. And then I went on staff there at the school, and I had met some people in the community, but just did not feel any attraction, any desire. And I still was very much in that place of courtship is the right way to do things. So I had a conversation with my dad and basically let him know that I'm ready to be married, but there's nobody out there on the horizon. And so if God taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, this is the right one, I'm open to that being a part of my story. And he took it pretty seriously. The church that we had gone to for many years, pastor and his family, we were close to them, and we would go occasionally back for church retreats after we moved away from Columbus, Ohio. And randomly they invited my parents to go to a church retreat with them. And so my dad was there, and Theodosia had just come back from a trip from Russia, and she had done work in orphanages for many years with the ministry that some friends had started. She shared about that, and my dad was just like, this is the one for Ryan. And so my parents, on their way home, had a conversation, and my dad was like, I got to call Ryan. And my mom's like, no, you got to think about this a little bit and find out if this is really a good idea. And my dad waited maybe a week and then called me and was like, hey, do you know so-and-so? And I had seen her at a homeschooling conference that I had represented the seminary. It was one of those things that she was just the little kid. I'm 5 years older than she is. So she was the little kid who was always playing with the other kids. And I was the older boy who all of the other boys looked up to. And so we always did the boy things. And it was very segregated. Like the boys and girls didn't do a lot of playing together because
No commingling.
no, you had to watch your P's and Q's.
Yeah.
My dad was like, I want you to pray about this. I just didn't have a reference. My memories were when she was 10, 12 years old, and I was 15. And so this is 7, 8 years later. I was in a situation where I could spend a lot of time alone and in silence and solitude. And there was just this sense of trust and a sense of peace and a sense of, okay, there's a bigger picture here that I am in the process of watching unfold. And so there was a spiritual pride also of like, this is the right way to do it.
Oh.
And no spiritual pride there. And if I do it the right way, God is the cosmic slot machine. And so if you put a coin in, every time you pull the lever, you're always going to win at the game.
Because that's how slot machines work.
Because absolutely. Obviously, I had never gambled before or been to a casino. So there was this element of I want to have a family. I've always wanted to be a dad.
Yeah.
That has been very strong and very alive in my experience. I think both because I absolutely love and adore my dad, and then also there was this sense of following the path of raising a family that loved God and followed biblical principles that I had grown up within the religious right and voted and campaigned and been a part of this, what I would now define as Christian nationalism. And so it was I was entering into a bigger picture in ways that it was very exciting. I would say it's probably seductive.
Sure.
As well, as I had people around me that I looked up to that were affirming each step that I was taking and telling me that they too were getting confirmation from God that this was God's will for my life and that I shouldn't hold back. Well, I did. So my dad ended up calling her father, our former pastor, and he was flattered because he knew who I was and where I was. They also were part of the homeschool cult. And there was a short time frame, and then he went to his wife and then also eventually to Theodosia and said, "Are y'all open with this, to this?" And they both said yes. And so I came home for Thanksgiving and I drove like 3.5 hours to meet this former pastor and my future father-in-law. And he had a legal pad that was full of questions, like a longhand. He's very articulate, very well-spoken, very much an evangelical, fundamentalist, kind of Puritan soul. And so he had all of the right questions to ask. And they were questions like, when did you meet Jesus for the first time? And is he your Lord and Savior? And have you ever looked at a woman with lust before? Jeez. And have you dated? And then he asked for like my direct reports at school for their contact information. He asked them some of the same questions like, is Ryan into porn? And is he like there was just, he really was thorough. And again, that was what was held up in our culture is you grill the potential suitor for your daughter before you literally give her away.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting in this Cracker Barrel in central Ohio for several hours and just answering question after question. And he has an amazing heart. He's a tender guy. And so I honor his love for his family and his daughter. It was a crazy ride, to say the least. Anyway, I passed.
You passed.
I passed. And we started a courtship. And the courtship was our families came together and there were ground rules of what we could do and what we couldn't do. I'm working in Texas. And so I only saw her a handful of times from when we started our relationship to the wedding.
Wow.
Yeah, it was wild. And it very quickly, like you become part of, I would say it was a tidal wave.
Sure.
There was so much spiritual energy, I think in an unhealthy way of we are doing this the right way and we're going to be salt and light and show the world what is the God intended way for a marriage to come about. So incredible amount of pressure. There was a time where I got cold feet and I was just like, I don't know if I even want to do this. This is crazy. Like I was having trouble. There was so much noise and pressure and expectation that was put on me that I couldn't spend enough time alone in silence and in solitude to really find who am I really? Do I really want this? And is this the step that I need to be taking? It was a short couple months that we took a break and then got right back on and got married. It was a huge wedding. So many friends and family and huge pomp and circumstance. Like it was just, it was over the top. And both of us were absolutely ready just to get the hell out of Dodge and get onto our honeymoon.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't want the pressure.
Sounds awful.
It was not fun. No, but
What?
we were supposed to be shining examples of the perfect way to do it. She had been conditioned to do that her whole life. We were writing and calling each other every night, a couple of letters every week. And we would fall asleep on the phone. Like it was,
That's
yeah,
really sweet.
yeah, it was adorable. It was adorable.
What year did you guys get married?
We got married in 2006.
Okay.
That was when I started pastoring my first church and started working as a chaplain in hospitals.
And so tell us where you're living at this point.
So part of the deal was, as a rising star within our Christian circle, I had the opportunity to be on staff at seminary. And so we had a house on seminary property. And so my salary and our home was there. And it was great until it wasn't. It was in the hill country, beautiful, beautiful land, rattlesnakes, hawks, deer, cactus, the Central Texas experience. Yeah. We were madly in love. There was a passion for life and for people and for God, the God that we've been given within our childhood.
Yeah. What do you love about her?
She is an amazing pianist and just music flows out of her. Her smile is so infectious, and she would walk into a room and it didn't matter how many people were there. everybody would just stop and turn and would feel her magnetic personality. Very sincere, very genuine. Yeah, had just a powerful love for people, for children, for animals. Is an amazing mom. Yeah. Love the kids. Yeah, we started having babies right away.
Tell us about your kiddos.
Yeah, within that first year, we got pregnant. Again, it was a part of our culture. It was don't prevent pregnancy, have as many kids as you possibly can have in a shortest period of time. And so we got encouragement, and I wouldn't say pressure. I would say encouragement from both sets of parents and our faith community to keep having babies. So we had Creedon, and then Amara, and then Tate and Gage. And we had 4 children, 5 and under. It was
wow,
crazy. People would just kind of stop and stand in awe when they would see the kids filing out of the Suburban. Like, it was, when they were younger, they moved as a little herd, just watching out for each other, and deep, strong connection. Yeah. Each of them beautiful little humans.
Yeah. So how long were the two of you married?
We were married for a little over 12 years, and then separated for about a year.
Yeah, what happened?
So we would, what happened? So both of us, within the first couple of years of marriage, experienced a failing of our spiritual experience. And for me, it was shortly after I was married and started pastoring and was also on staff at the school. There were 2 individuals who were mentors of mine and ended up being in leadership positions. And basically, one had an opportunity to make a power grab and take over the finances of the school, as well as the leadership. He was trying to push out the other person who had tenure, take his power and influence away. I was in the middle of all of that and trying to understand what their message of love and loving God and loving people, and how this power grab and dynamic within the school was a representation or a following of the ideals that were held to, or at least held up. And so that was a beginning crack for my experience of losing my faith and flirting with atheism for a good year. In that time frame, I was still preaching every Sunday and Wednesday nights Bible study, but I didn't open my Bible except on Sunday mornings when I needed to have a sermon, and I wasn't praying. Had lost that sense of a connection with the divine because of that schism that had taken place within the lives of 2 people that I idolized, and it also impacted and influenced my life. So that experience was very scary for me, and then also scary for my wife at the time, because she had always told people when they would ask her in her childhood, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she would always tell them, I want to be a pastor's wife. And here she's married to someone who is going through a crisis of faith, and like she could feel. And I didn't talk a lot about it while I was going through it that year. Like, I would allude to certain things and struggling and the pain relationally within the school. But beyond that, she really never asked either. It was it was a little bit scary for her as well, because what she thought she wanted all of a sudden was being shaken to the core. I came out on the other side, and I would describe it as I cleaned house, my interior of the way I saw myself, the way I saw the world around me, the way that I related to scripture, to God, to Jesus, to spirit, like all of that, and my emotional connection to my wife and my kids went out of the house that is Ryan and on the front lawn. And for a good period of time was just like, I don't know what I need to let back in to my heart space, because everything feels like a lie right now, and nothing feels like it's true or makes sense. And there was this one day when I was out in nature, there was the same sense that I had when I was 5 years old, that Jesus is going to help me through this. And I was just kind of like, I don't even know if I believe in Jesus anymore, but okay. and I would describe it from what the book of Revelation talks about, there being this door and love knocking on the door saying, hey, can I come and be a part of your internal experience? And I was listening to folks like Alan Watts and reading people like Eckhart Tolle and Rob Bell and Brian McLaren, and was introduced to Father Richard Rohr. And all of these people gave me permission to embrace doubt and fear that everything I had believed and lived my life for might have been BS. And slowly brought my wife and my kiddos back into my heart space. And then I was just kind of like, I can still preach and I can still pray, but love is the only thing that makes sense. So the vernacular of love being the ground of my being became my experience. And the sense of a center of who I am on the inside was always pointing towards, how do I love in this moment? How do I give myself to myself? And then how do I give myself to others in need around me? Needless to say, we got lots of flack from people in our lives who all of a sudden, Ryan and Theodosia were going to see Rob Bell in Austin give his Everything is Spiritual talk. And like he
explain to people why that might be taboo.
Yeah. So Rob Bell wrote a book called Love Wins. And it's not the pro LGBTQI saying. He wrote it before that was popularized by LGBTQI. He wrote the book Love Wins basically as a biblical response to the fallacy of hell and how hell is used as a motivator in the gospel today. And so he went through the Greek and the Hebrew scriptures, and then also the examples within history of how hell came into the consciousness of Christendom. And evangelicals literally freaked the fuck out over that. So I had family, extended family members. I had my father-in-law. I had family friends, people calling me and asking me to go to do coffee, and then sitting for hours as they Bible versed me to death to try to prove that hell is real. And that we need to preach a health-centric gospel. And I'm just like,
Gosh.
that's not the Jesus that I read in my Bible today without all of the mumbo jumbo that you have kind of fed into the system. So that was a traumatizing experience for both of us. And we really learned to rely on one another and trust each other's experience and also process. Because shortly after that took place, she started questioning her experience in childhood, and she had done work in orphanages, and that was deeply traumatizing for her, some of the things that she saw in Russia. So here we are as pastors of a church, and when we would do pre-marriage counseling with couples before we would marry them, she would tell the story of how we got together, and she started to add something that wasn't there before. And that was, I knew that I could never bring a guy home to meet my parents. I knew that I would have to let my dad pick who I was going to marry. That was true.
Sure.
And that made sense. But that became prominent in the way that she, and I could feel emotionally, was relating to our marriage and our family, that it was not something that she chose. To, I think, move forward to your question of how did our marriage come to an end, there was a evening where we had babysitter for the kids, and we went to see the symphony in Austin. And while we were there, she got up a couple times during the symphony and excused herself to go to the bathroom. And I had this horrible sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that something's not right. That was on a Saturday. The previous day was it was a Friday evening. And I've been a part of the Illumin men's work that Father Richard Rohr was a part of starting for over a decade. And that Friday night, I was in Austin after work for this men's meeting. And about 10 minutes, I got there and was helping set up the room. And I had that same sinking feeling. And I was just sick to my stomach. And so I grabbed my phone and I was just like, something's wrong. Something's off. What is going on? I didn't have any text messages, no missed calls. And so I just felt into where she is and what she is experiencing. And I could feel that she was with somebody else in a strange place. And I was just like, this isn't good. And so I pulled up, sometimes you second guess yourself.
Sure. Your
intuition, your gut, whatever your superpowers might be. And I did. And I pulled up, find my phone app.
The location.
Yep, the location. And we both shared our locations with each other. The pin showed her at Bear Creek Cemetery, which was just a little bit north of the town we lived in. And I was just like, that's really weird. And so I texted her and I said, hey, how are you and the kids doing? And she said, oh, I'm with some friends right now. We're at their house. We're going to hang out for the evening. I'll see you when you get home. And I was just like, okay. And so I screenshotted it. This was Friday. And then Saturday we're at the symphony and I got the same sick feeling again. I feel like I'm going to throw up now.
Yeah.
And it was, something's not right. And so we had our passwords synced in the cloud. And I was like, I wonder what's going on. And I pulled up her Instagram feed. I logged in and there was a ding for a message. And I opened it up and she was sexting with a guy. that was the second time that she had left. And I found out, I looked up on the feed, and she had been messaging him throughout the evening. She came back. I don't remember anything else from the symphony. I do remember getting back to the car in the parking lot, and I looked at her and I said, I know, and this is what I have. I have the proof. And she broke down, and I was absolutely furious. I don't think I said anything else on the way home because I did not know how to respond or deal with it. That night, I spent the night in our little guest house, and the next morning we started trudging through the weeds and talking through it. And he wasn't the only one, and there were the way I describe it now is that there were switches that had been flipped in her lack of experience, and I think opportunity to grow up as an adolescent and to have experiences. And once that switch was flipped, and once she came to a point of not being able to reconcile, I'm married to someone that I didn't choose, there was a letting go. Went through marriage counseling afterwards and tried to work through it. And I thought things were generally going well until I found out that they weren't. And she had been saving money, putting money aside, and making plans for a couple months to leave me, but never said anything about it. I came home on a Wednesday evening after a grief support group that I facilitated. The house was empty. Our cash in the lockbox had been taken, the kids' birth certificates, her passports. She cleaned out our savings. The house was dark, and there was a note that said, I'll call you on Monday. I have some things to figure out. That was on a Wednesday. I did not know what to do. It was awful. I woke up the next morning at 2:00 in the morning and had a panic attack. And I'd had a pretty powerful experience about a month and a half earlier, going through the Illumined Men's Rites of Passage, where I had worked through some energy blockages in my experience, and specifically in my throat. And so being able to vocalize, I could not make a sound that morning, waking up with that panic attack alone in my house. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. I really had not studied or wasn't familiar with Kundalini yoga, or I had a little bit of understanding of my chakras and my energy centers. And I remember getting up and going to my computer, opening up YouTube and typing in Kundalini yoga practices. And the first one that popped up, I started doing it. And the energy centers that were blocked at that time shifted, and there was just incredible energetic release, freedom, and I was able to feel the fear of abandonment and being left and lied to and cheated on and everything that came along with that. And so I started practicing yoga pretty much for the next 6 months every morning at 2 a.m. because I would wake up with a panic attack and clogged again and blocked. And it was an ongoing process.
I'm curious how much of the rest of your guys' experience as you kind of unwound your marriage and figured out what does it mean to have children together moving forward. Like, I'm curious how much of that you want to talk about.
So that Wednesday morning was the last morning I had a conversation with her. I woke up and she made me breakfast, and normally she didn't sit at the table when I would eat breakfast in the morning. And she sat at the table and we chatted, and I would normally give her a kiss in the house, but she followed me out to my car and gave me a kiss and a hug when I left. And that was the last time I've had any physical contact or verbal communication with her. I was served with divorce papers Friday morning. So 3 days, Thursday, Friday, 2 days later, served with divorce papers. And as I'm reading through it, it says that she is taking 100% full custody of the kids. And she had a restraining order against me. I started to hear through the grapevine, through friends and through family and people in our community, that she was telling them that I had abused the kids. And that I was an alcoholic and a drug addict and a sex addict. In this time frame, my lawyer that I hired said, "Do you think she's an unfit mother to be with her kids?" And I'm like, I've never seen anything to indicate that. I have no idea, but this just doesn't make any sense. Like, all of a sudden, she's ghosted me and there's zero communication. I didn't see the kids for a number of months. Like, it was really intense. So going from being a very hands-on father, Creedon was 12 years old at the time, and he loved to go to city council meetings with me, and I would do the opening prayer and he would be standing right there, so proud. So the kids were very involved in our lives and what we were doing in the community. And so it all of a sudden just totally gone. And I started having people in the community call me, and they're like, "She's not answering her phone. She's not returning text." I called a longtime friend and I said, "This is about a week into it. I haven't heard from my wife. I haven't heard from my kids. I was served with divorce papers. I need to know that they're okay, or I'm going to hire a investigator." And he said, "I have heard from her. The kids are okay. She's okay. You need to stay away from her and stop trying to contact." And I was just like, but I didn't do anything. And I started getting more and more people coming to me saying, "This is what we're hearing that she's either said to us directly, or that people are saying about you. We know you. We spent time with your family. We've been in your home many times. You've been with us. And like, this just doesn't make any sense." And it still doesn't.
Yeah.
The reality is that she has told the kids that I abused them during their childhood, and she had CPS called, Child Protective Services. And so there was an investigation, and the investigator, the social worker, he ended up testifying on my behalf, along with the family counselor who was a part of the mediation process between the kids and I, because she had them so wound up and tight that they were petrified to see me and spend any time. The kids told the CPS investigator and also the family therapist that mom wouldn't let them play outside because she was afraid dad would possibly drive by and steal you away, and that she would never see them again. And so that trauma was brought out in the court proceedings. Yeah, I lost a lot in that. I lost a wife, and I lost close relationship with my kiddos. There was the loss of connection with a community, the church that we pastored, longtime friends that would no longer respond to my text or take my calls because they didn't understand that you trust someone who talks about abuse, but you always verify. Always verify. And as a family, we had helped mothers, single mothers in the community with food and financial support. Our church had, and we had some folks stay with us in our guest house. It was kind of as a halfway house as they were getting on their feet. And you always believe somebody who's in pain and suffering. Yeah. And it's also important to verify the story. And so it was really hard and disappointing to lose people that I had known for more than a decade, that all of a sudden were gone. Best piece of advice that I had, one of my friends that I had met, he also went through the men's rites of passage when I did, right before all of this went down. He's in Arizona. He's a hospice chaplain and therapist. He texted me. I called and left a message for him and told him what was going on. And he texted me and he said, "Ryan, keep your heart open and don't numb the pain." And that became my mantra for a couple of years. Keep your heart open, don't numb the pain. I knew that the same door that the pain walked in was also the same door that the healing and the restoration and the hope would walk through. Relationship with my kiddos is strained at best, and it's challenging. It's a waiting game.
Yeah. How old are they now?
Oldest is 18, just started college, and then daughter is just turned 17, and then next son is 16, and then the baby is 13.
So you mentioned your mantra became keeping your heart open, don't numb the pain.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what it was like to move forward from that part of your life that kind of came to a screeching halt.
I had some pretty incredible friends who came alongside and supported. I couldn't continue to be in a position of spiritual leadership within a church. It was just so painful. I was also a hospice chaplain and grief counselor as well, and I needed to take a break from the direct patient contact. And a friend who I had worked in his hospice for about 6 years, he pulled some strings and gave me an opportunity to step into a marketing education role within the company. And that was a lifesaver because I couldn't open up my heart to others who were suffering or experiencing loss or pain, because my heart was just absolutely thrashed, and emotionally I was broken. For a number of months while we were separated and waiting for the divorce to be finalized, and I stayed with a family. This family loved and accepted me. Their kids probably don't know how much joy and comfort just seeing them interact with their parents and their unconditional love for me as their former pastor, and then sleeping in their guest bedroom for all those months. Like, they really ministered to me, and it was a safe place where I could just be absolutely undone. And so my internal process was feeling what was true. And I started a couple different practices. One was an emotional naming practice where every morning when I'd wake up, I would ask the question, what do I feel in my body right now? And what are the thoughts in my head right now? And then what are the emotions that I'm feeling in my heart? And for the first couple months, it was just numb. Like, I just couldn't feel anything most of the time. There were some times where anger would pop up, or fear, or shame, or just deep sadness. But mostly, like, the temperature of my heart experience was that of just being numb. And so it was important for me to journal that out and to keep a record and to kind of watch what my internal and physical and mental health was. I had a great therapist who was able to just listen and redirect and point in the right direction and hold space. Have another illumined brother who I would say he's also an elder in my life, who would regularly call and text. And he came to Austin to spend a day with me, and we just walked trails at a state park for hours and hours. And there were large portions of that time where we didn't say anything. It was just silence, and he was just doing what you do with somebody who is in deep loss, and you just are present. Like that type of love and encouragement and support gave my heart an opportunity to begin to, I think, breathe again. I think I was afraid for my heart to take a deep breath and to move forward. Like, the idea of loving again, or being vulnerable with someone after betrayal was just absolutely insane until it wasn't. And then it was like, oh, part of my healing journey and part of growing through this will be loving again. And so starting to entertain that thought. It was a good year after everything was finalized that I started dating again, and knew that was how I was gonna find my values of love being the ground of my being. Love isn't something that exists in a vacuum. love has an ebb and a flow, and it's coming and going and recharging and giving unconditionally and resting and waiting and being patient and moving forward with passion, full speed ahead. And like all of those take place within the context of a relationship and commitment. So I knew that would happen. I didn't know how it would happen or what it would look like. Dating was terrifying as a 40-something-year-old. Like, being divorced because of my upbringing, that was the scarlet letter in my experience. I'm no longer qualified or approved by God to be what everyone always said that I was supposed to be or God had called me to be. And now all of a sudden, because of something that somebody else's choice, like I lost part of my identity. It was ego death in a transition from first half of life into second half of life, and letting go of what no longer served and being able to take hold of what is my true authentic self, at least in that moment. The process of keeping my heart open was a process of finding out what spiritual practices, what the most beneficial ways for me, for my mental health and emotional and spiritual and physical, like rediscovering all of those little facets and pieces, and being open to another good friend in Austin. I mean, he would call me up and he'd be like, I need to hear the fire. I need to hear your anger. I need to hear that you're gonna not let this define you. Like, he was calling forth my warrior energy in ways that I needed, because I was just flat in different moments in my life. Nature became a very prominent focus in my spiritual practices. And I had always spent lots of time out in nature, but there was a new way, a new sense that nature could hold the loss of my wife and my kids and our lives and our dreams and everything that we had worked to build together, that was literally a dumpster fire. And nature didn't shrink back from it. There was no question. The trees and the sky and the birds and the ground and the grass, all of it was able to energetically provide that safe space of healing.
So tell us, like what else do we need to know about you? Like, what did I miss, if anything, from your story?
I think my ex actually gave me an incredible gift. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't wish my experience on anyone,
yeah,
for sure. And there's a lot of years of work and repair ahead in regards to my kids' lives.
Yeah.
I have an incredible amount of hope and I think trust in divine love for that process. The gift that she gave me was, I would say, releasing me from it started off as a blessing, but it became a curse. And that would be growing up within evangelical fundamentalist Christian circles and taking on the responsibility of a pastor and a leader. It was nothing, it wasn't something I ever wanted. It was always something that was projected onto me by my parents, by professors, by community, by churches, by other pastors. There was always this recognition that God has called you for the ministry, and obviously that means you're going to be a pastor. When I love to teach and I love to help people connect the dots. I love helping individuals process their grief and their loss and integrate experience. But I never wanted to be the CEO of a church. And in the Western world, that's what a lead pastor is the CEO of the church. And so her blowing up our lives actually gave me the insight and the understanding and freed me from that blessing that turned into a curse. I never would have taken that final step to become a pastor if I didn't know that she had always wanted to be a pastor's wife. And when her father, as we were sitting in that Cracker Barrel, looked at me and said, "This is what she's always wanted to be. Are you sure that God is calling you to marry my daughter? Because if that's true, then you need to be a pastor." And then I took steps to move in that direction. And I'm grateful for the gift that she gave me to free me from something that was more wearing than wonderful in my experience.
I think you have a really incredible gift of kind of weaving a really rich tapestry. Like I can feel, I can feel right along with you when you're telling your story, as if like you're really good at helping me understand what it was like for you. And there's a lot of beauty in your story and a lot of incredible heartbreak. So thank you for the journey. It was a delight.
You are welcome.